Believe us when we tell you that the 80s seem to be an era that Hollywood is still fixated on. After all, the whole decade did live up to its name of being the golden period of exciting offbeat horror, successfully having managed to literally scar an entire generation to death. Now, if you're looking for a term that will blend perfectly with the horror flicks of the mentioned era, it would categorically be campy. There is no denying that the 80s did feature some of the best campy horror movies, and that brings us to the main content of today's video, where we will be taking a look at 13 of the most amazing campy horror films of the specified timeline that, mind you, are still fun to watch. So are you excited for this video? We know you are. Well, without further ado, let's jump right in. But before we get into the video, we do have one very small request. If you enjoy our content, then please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Now, let's begin.
Or no! God damn it! Answer me, Angela! Answer me! God!
Sleepaway Camp, 1983. Robert Hiltzik slasher flick is fondly remembered to this day for its twist ending. The narrative has a harrowing boating mishap, taking the lives of Angela's family, after which the surviving child is sent to live with her eccentric aunt and cousin. Sometime later, she, along with her cousin, is sent to Camp Arawak, a summer camp where the counselors and campers start meeting unforeseen, increasingly violent deaths, one after the other. Those who have seen the movie will agree with us when we tell you that is the disclosure of the killer's identity in the end that is considered one of the most appalling in the horror genre, and add to this, in the American cinema history as well. Hiltzik has done a brilliant job whipping up a legit thriller, which has become a cult classic over the years. It is fitting to address Sleepaway Camp as a movie, one that is not afraid to deal with some rather heavy subjects, but at the same time also stays grounded to its slasher genre. There's enough gore to keep every gore enthusiast out there satiated. In fact, there is a particular death sequence on display that is caused by a lit curling iron. You know how they say there are some scenes that impact you so much that they stay with you for a while? Well, mark our words when we say this scene is nasty enough to linger in your mind for a long time. The same goes for the finale, that hits you right where it's meant to. And then, the film elevates the intense mood and the graphic mayhem featured in the movie. It's hard to believe that there's still some out there who have not watched the film, but if you happen to be one of them, you better give this one a shot. Gremlins, 1984. Joe Dante's Gremlins follows Billy, a teenager receiving a cute, furry-looking, mysterious mogwai as a Christmas gift from his father with a particular list of instructions to pay heed to. Of course, Billy breaks the rules concerning his new pet and, in turn, unleashes a horde of mean-spirited, mischievous creatures that end up causing rampant destruction in the otherwise peaceful town of Kingston Falls. One of the primary things that make this 1984 comedy horror film still so fun to watch is the solitary fact that the movie amicably fits into so many genres. There's comedy and fantasy, and let's not disregard that it also happens to be a PG-rated horror. Penned down by Chris Columbus and backed by Dante's wild and creative vision, Gremlins is an ingenious, twisted Christmas classic. If you ask us, it is pretty hard to believe that the movie was actually made almost 40 years ago, and at a time when one had to resort to using practical effects instead of computer-generated imagery. The film is a blast from the past and wickedly funny, so get the tub of popcorn ready and simply dig in, because this flick here certainly deserves your attention. The Toxic Avenger, 1984. What you're looking at happens to be a superhero black comedy splatter movie, one that is directed by Michael Hertz and Lloyd Kaufman. Released as part of the first installment in the Toxic Avenger film series, the storyline has Melvin, a meek janitor employed at a health club, accidentally falling into an open drum of toxic waste and mutating into a hideously deformed mutant with the size and strength of a superhero. The local mop boy soon becomes the local superhero superhero who is determined to put an end to corruption, bullies, and indifference. You'll be surprised to learn that the Toxic Avenger, upon its release, was ignored in the beginning, but there was no stopping the movie from becoming a cult classic later. There are people who have addressed the flick as revolting, some even called it stupid, but there's something about it that makes this such an entertaining camp trash classic. Gorehounds are gonna love the amount of gore on display. You have guts getting ripped out, arms being severed, and also children's heads being crushed. Despite the flick's over-the-top killing scenes, it is splittingly hilarious at the end of the day. Believe us when we tell you there is not a single dull moment during the whole runtime of 82 minutes. If you're someone with an open mind, a strong stomach, and of course a warped sense of humor, the Toxic Avenger is categorically for you. Killer Clowns from Outer Space, 1988. Well, the award for the strangest alien invasion movie goes to the Kyoto Brothers, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. The plotline has evil aliens looking like clowns, but known as clowns terrorizing the small town of Crescent Cove in the hopes of capturing and feeding on the humans. With a group of youngsters realizing that their town is in danger, they team up together to stop the clowns from exterminating the human race. When you have clowns as killers, you know for a fact that you just cannot take the movie seriously. But having said that, Killer Clowns from Outer Space surprises you by setting up a mood that is not only creepy but also quite unsettling. For starters, the aliens featured in the film aren't just regular clowns. They're grotesque to look at, carnivorous, and have teeth as sharp as a crocodile. For what it is, the storyline is wildly imaginative. There's some fascinating special effects on display, and a special mention to John Massari for a complimenting musical score that takes the film notches higher. So, do you call yourself a fan of twisted, morbid humor and bizarre horror movies? Well, give this your 90 minutes then and thank us later. The Blob, 1988. Chuck Russell's science fiction movie happens to be a remake of the 1958 film also titled The Blob. The narrative has an acidic, amoeba-like organism made as part of a biological experiment during the Cold War, spreading havoc in the town of Arborville in California. The substance, known as the Blob, starts to grow at a geometric rate, devouring and dissolving anything with which it comes in contact. While it is true that most remakes of classic movies are typically frowned upon, some are genuinely good. At times, even surpassing the original. Well, The Blob falls in this category and, may we add so, happens to be one of the most underrated horror flicks of the 80s. The special effects on display are spectacular, and the movie is packed with gratuitous amounts of carnage, horror, and action. One of the best things about The Blob is that it takes the idea of the original movie and puts an intriguing twist into the plot, making it way more entertaining than its predecessor. German composer Michael Honig certainly deserves mention for the haunting musical score, effectively managing to keep the spotlight on the merciless monster throughout the runtime. The Blob is a recommendation that we confidently stand by. Night of the Creeps, 1986. After an alien capsule crash lands on Earth in 1959, a college fraternity member gets exposed to the slug-like organism. The body is kept cryogenically frozen, and we move forward to 27 years, where university student Chris Romero is seen making up his mind to join a fraternity house in the hopes of wooing his crush. When Chris and his disabled friend J.C. Hooper are tasked with stealing a dead body from the University Medical Center and placing it on the steps of a rival fraternity house as part of an initiation rite, the boys get to work. However, when they discover the cryogenically frozen corpse in a state of suspended animation inside a secret room in the medical center, they inadvertently wake him up. It's only fair to say that hell breaks loose later at the fraternity house, especially when alien slug-like creatures begin to infect the humans and transform them into the undead. When Fred Decker made Night of the Creeps, he not only marked his feature directorial debut with the movie, but also paid homage to the B-movie genre. Apart from boasting a cast that literally has character last names of the most iconic horror directors of the time, the flick undeniably has everything that one would want from an 80s horror. Starting from the catchiest tagline, the cheesiest one-liners, a decent plot, a steady pace, and some fantastic special effects, everything works in favor of this movie. Boasting a runtime of 88 minutes, excellent cinematography work by Robert C. New, and an electrifying background score by Barry DeForzon, Night of the Creeps is a visual treat that will have you hooked until the end. Vamp, 1986. Richard Wank's black comedy horror movie starring Grace Jones and Chris Makepeace follows 3 college students going to a sleazy strip to fetch a stripper for the college fraternity. However, the stripper turns out to be a vampire, but that's not all. The boys eventually realize that the whole place is a nest of feral vampires. What was supposed to be an otherwise simple trip to the club turns into a struggle for survival. Backed by a witty script by Wank and Donald P. Borchers, Vamp is an imaginative and tantalizing vampire feature with unpredictable twists, straightforward gruesome horror, and tons of tongue-in-cheek humor. Cinematographer Elliot Davis deserves a special mention for setting up the sinisterly lingering and nocturnal atmosphere. We also cannot disregard Jonathan's steamy background score and Greg Canham's top-rate makeup effects, which make this highly underrated vampire cult movie entertaining and an unusual experience. Vamp definitely deserves your attention.
I knew you bastards were gonna be trouble when I first brought you in here.
Shopping Mall, 1986. Jim Wynorski's techno-horror movie has 3 tech robots, each part of a state-of-the-art security system of a mall malfunctioning and going rampant on a killing spree. With a group of young employees of the mall staying behind for a late-night party, they become targets of the heavily armed, maniacal killing machines. When you have Chopping Mall as the name of the movie, it just gets impossible not to love that title. The flick here happens to be a treasure trove of some of the most outlandish murders on display. There's literally a laser head explosion scene, and no, we're not kidding about it. The best part of this movie is that they have actually used a real location, and in this case, an actual mall, making it all the more exciting. It is fast-paced and delightfully cheesy, and you're bound to love the characters on display. Truth be told, Chopping Mall happens to be a righteous guilty pleasure of many horror fans, and if you're someone who fancies campy horror flicks and Scream Queen Barbara Crampton, this one is made for you. Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, 1988. James Signorelli's comedy horror film revolves around Elvira, a voluptuous LA television horror hostess arriving in the overtly prudish town of Falwell in Massachusetts upon learning that she is a beneficiary of her deceased great-aunt, Morgana, who has left behind an archaic mansion, a recipe book, and a pet poodle. Oblivious to Elvira, her seemingly harmless but harsh uncle happens to be a warlock who is hell-bent on retrieving Morgana's spellbook and has plans of not only wiping out Elvira, but also conquering the whole world. Cassandra Peterson is everything you ever wanted in a movie, and she is the sole reason this film here is worth watching. As far as the plot is concerned, it's deliberately kept simple, with well-developed characters, excellent special effects, and clever humor, all moving at a nice pace. With Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, don't expect this flick here to change the world or your opinion about movies. This one is solely meant to entertain you, and mark our words when we say you will be thoroughly entertained. It is corny, campy, and a classic, and you're absolutely going to love it.
Then I'd have to kill her too.
Right up!
Fright Night, 1985. Tom Holland's Fright Night is probably one of the best vampire movies of the 80s, one that still holds up today. Also written by Holland, the story follows teenager Charlie Brewster, who believes his new next-door neighbor is a vampire. Even with Charlie making the discovery, nobody believes him, and he is instead ridiculed for such preposterous accusations. Left with no other choice, Charlie makes up his mind to enlist the help of the vampire slayer of his favorite horror TV program to aid him in dealing with the vampire menace. Well, there's just something about this movie that everybody seems to love. We don't know if it's the storyline, the remarkable effects, or just the 80s cheesiness. Whatever it is, it did work in the favor of the film, making it entertaining and chilling at the same time. Full credits to actor Chris Sarandon for being such a sheer delight in the movie. His performance is mind-blowing, and he conclusively steals the show with his character. Another person who deserves a mention is is actor Jonathan Stark, who serves as Sarandon's character's day guardian. Oh, he is terrific too. As for Holland, he sticks to the basics of a vampire flick and smoothly fuses them with the 80s feeling. Please don't attempt to watch this movie expecting it to scare you to death. Fright Night is creepy in its way, and you will be tempted to watch the film over and over again. Also, we recommend you watch this movie with the lights off for a better result. Heathers, 1988, directed by Michael Lehman and written by Daniel Waters. This teen black comedy satire follows Veronica, who is part of a very popular but feared snobby clique at her high school. Sick of being a lackey to the cool girls, she teams up with the effortlessly charming newcomer Jason Dean to teach the self-appointed stars of the school a lesson. But unbeknownst to Veronica, Jason happens to be a sociopathic high school student who has motives of his own. If you're looking for a twisted and bloody plot in a high school setting, please head this way. This dark comedy, which is often addressed as a great satire of teen life back in the 80s, definitely picks up every teen angst and cliche only to spin it on a plot of revenge gone entirely wrong. Those who have had a chance to watch the movie will agree with us when we tell you that it is wickedly funny. There's a high chance that you might laugh like a lunatic only to kick yourself very hard the next minute for doing so. Heathers was more like an attempt on his part to bring out the real nature of teenagers, further delving into what it is that they hate about high school, the tyranny of social groups, teen suicide, and so on. If you ask us, Heathers was ahead of its time and is a safe bet for a good time. April Fool's Day, 1986. If you call yourself a traditional fan of slasher movies, you have every reason to admire Fred Walton's April Fool's Day. The plot is deliberately kept very simple and revolves around a group of college students gathering at this remote island mansion of one of their friends on the weekend leading up to April Fool's Day. But with them beginning to fall victim one by one to an unknown assailant and no way to get off the island, what was meant to be a relaxing staycation soon turns out to be a fight for their lives. With a screenplay by Danilo Bach, April Fool's Day happens to be way more clever and entertaining in terms of its script than the regular slasher films. It is witty and twisted, with teen horror film conventions, a good cast, quirky humor, and mystery all around it. Charles Bernstein's musical score adds more to the spooky atmospheric setup, and Charles Minsky does a decent job with his cinematography work. In short, it is an intriguing watch with an ending that we bet you did not see coming. Death Spa, 1989. Our last but not the least addition to the list happens to be Michael Fisher's supernatural slasher movie, revolving around a series of mysterious, terrible deaths taking place in a fancy, high-tech Los Angeles health club that has a state-of-the-art computer system, which in turn controls all the workout machines along with the other features. However, it is eventually discovered that the freak accidents taking place are actually murders executed by the club owner's deceased wife. Boasting a screenplay by Mitch Paradise and James Bartroff, Death Spa, also released as Witchblade, delivers everything that one can derive from both the titles, packed with a horde of gory murders that are utterly hilarious. This movie isn't your regular slasher flick. It is more inclined towards the elements of horror and mystery, but at the same time, the film itself doesn't take itself too seriously. You can't miss this one if you are a fan of cheesy, laughable horrors. Marvelous verdict. Well, that is all for today, and with this, we finally come to the end of our video here. So which of the ones mentioned were you most fascinated by? And did your favorite 80s campy horror flick make it to our list? We would love to know your comments in the section below. Now, if you enjoyed this video, then please do leave a thumbs up. Also, stay tuned with us as we promise to come back with more exciting content. Till then, goodbye, and thanks for watching. Have a nice one.
Oh!